A warm welcome to all educators joining us today. On behalf of CENTA, we are delighted to have you with us for another insightful session in our ongoing CENTA webinar series for teachers, a space where passionate educators come together to learn, reflect, and grow professionally. Your presence and participation continue to inspire us as we build a stronger, more empowered teaching community. We are also thrilled to say that Centox has been thoughtfully restructured to make this space even more purposeful and structured towards learning, reflection, and growth. We have built the sessions around themes aligned with center standards that are globally recognized and widely acknowledged. We'll walk you through the details towards the end of today's session, so do stay with us. Today's session is about something that touches every corner of our classrooms: language. Language is far more than just a tool for instruction. It is the very lens through which students build confidence, comprehend complex ideas, and find their voice. In today's increasingly diverse educational landscape, managing mixed language proficiencies and mother tongue influence can be one of a teacher's greatest challenges. This session is designed to help us transform those language barriers into bridges for active student participation, deeper comprehension, and genuine inclusion. We'll explore the critical role language plays in learning and communication, navigate the nuances of multilingual classrooms, and look at practical, hands on strategies to simplify instructions, manage mixed language dynamics, and build a classroom ecosystem where every learner feels heard, included, and confident enough to express themselves. Through classroom examples, role plays, and practical activities, today's session will give you concrete tools you can bring directly into your classrooms. And to guide us through this exploration, we have a facilitator who brings a truly global and research backed perspective to the practice of teaching. It is my pleasure to introduce today's facilitator, Moon Ray. A very warm welcome to Centox. Moon Ray is an international academic program leader, curriculum designer, and professional doctorate researcher specializing in modern pedagogical innovation. She designs and delivers higher education content spanning from BA to MEd levels for global institutions, including Eastbridge University, Paris, while training educators worldwide in TEFL, special need educations, and 21st century instructional strategies. Her current research focuses on evaluating the impact of evidence based teaching methodologies to improve structured academic outcomes in urban school environments. Moon brings a global, research backed perspective to the classroom, blending rigorous academic frameworks with practical real world teaching solutions, making her the perfect guide for today's session. Moon, we are honored to have you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Upasana ma'am. Thank you so much. And I welcome heartily every other participant in this particular webinar. And I'm absolutely glad to also be here and talk, I think. That's exactly what we're going to do. And as we're all aware that we will be talking about, as Upasana very rightly mentioned, that it's language where we are going to put our focus into. Now, as she also, while she was introducing the entire session, mentioned that it's language that
Ma'am,
it's
I'm
just
sorry to interrupt, but your voice is breaking.
okay. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, I can hear. Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, as she mentioned, that it's not just a tool. And then what exactly it is? How should we view language? And where language is being viewed, which is the space that we're talking about. And in this particular session, we're talking about the classroom. We're all very, very well aware of how a classroom looks like. Sometimes as teachers, sometimes as students, but the classroom environment is something which is very, very common and known to us. However, how do we place language in a classroom and the interactions that we have between the participants in the classroom? How does that affect us? This is
Uh, I'm
exactly
sorry
what
again.
we are going to be looking in.
Yeah, your video is breaking again.
Yes, please.
Yeah, can you speak again?
Okay. Anything any better now?
No, no, no.
I
It's
connection, so yep, better. I'm sorry, is it better
no.
now? Couldn't hear you.
Yeah, yeah, it is better now. Can you? Yeah.
Sure, thank you. So this is what we are going to be looking into. Now, having said that, we already get to see the slide, and that talks about how we are going to be navigating multilingualism and inclusion, and also look into students' confidence level in a classroom through language. Basically, we are going to be looking at what language does to us, students as well as teachers. So here I kind of let's start with a particular situation. Okay, so imagine walking into a classroom and everyone is speaking in a language which you're not being able to understand or follow properly. You somewhat can manage to decipher. You also have an answer. You want to participate, but your tongue hesitates. Your confidence drops. Slowly and eventually, silence. Okay, you take to silence and it becomes your identity in the classroom. The reason is you couldn't use language and participate. Have you ever felt that you are intellectually capable but linguistically invisible? You want to talk about it. You know what the teacher is talking about. You're present in the class, but you're not being able to participate. Something's holding you back. um, if I may ask you, dear participants, teachers, educators, how many students in your classroom today feel exactly this way? I'm sure you do have an understanding of that. We as teachers, we also say, try, say, let it be out, at least try, frame a sentence. But it doesn't happen so easily. Do we, as teachers and educators, sometimes mistake silence for inability? Oh, I'm not going to get an answer from him or her. I'm asking a question, but he or she is not answering. He's standing up for an answer, but silence. So, honestly speaking, at this juncture, as educators and teachers, we have come to realize this that language can become both a bridge as well as a barrier at the same time. So let's see how many of you agree to this. If you agree to this, please to this? Could you please maybe type a yes, or I guess you have experienced something like this in your classroom as well? Yeah, let's see if you can. I'm sure I just want you to reflect on this, because this is a very common situation, and sometimes we don't really put in a lot of importance to identify why this is happening. We try and focus mostly on how to change the scenarios, but we don't question as to why exactly this outcome is taking place in my classroom. Okay, so now moving on. Okay, I'm going to go over the next slide. And here we are now going to understand that there is multilingualism in the classroom in a very, very big way today in 21st century classroom. There can be multiple sort of languages, dialects, cultural identities, So we can say that multilingualism is also some sort of a norm. But even then, we try and build some sort of a linguistic uniformity, and we very clearly and create this invisible exclusion. But the question is, do we really need to do that? Do we really need to not allow and entertain dialects, or say sometimes tone, sometimes where you are actually belonging from your respective cultural identity, if that comes out? Is it really something that we are not going to be allowing in classroom? The answer lies somewhere in between. There is no certain yes or a no. However, if you are somebody, maybe a polyglot, you've known a lot of languages, even then it's very difficult, and I somehow feel it's also not really 100% possible to speak in any other language as confidently and properly and appropriately like that of your mother tongue. You may be very, very astute and amazing at your language skill, but there would be some nuances which there's a chance that we miss out on. So, with that, we are actually focusing on a certain present scenario. A, we are talking about the child and the students in the class to become aware of their different cultural as well as language exposures. However, we are also expecting them to speak in a language which is absolutely understandable by all. Accurately, when I come up with this statement, it seems to be fine. Why not? They are learning languages, they can. But it's not that smooth, isn't it, educators? It's not that smooth. It's not that simple. There are constrictions, there are ups and downs, and we do face that. And this is not just something wherein the students are feeling a little low or keeping themselves quiet. It isn't just that. It isn't just that. Yes, Upasana, are you saying something?
No, no, your voice was breaking, but now it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's not exactly that easy. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a situation, and we have to handle it in a very mature manner, a sensitive manner, to be honest. So what are we expecting ourselves to do here? Um, there is
Ma'am,
this
I think your
person who have come
internet
across the name of
is creating issues again because your voice is breaking and a lot of audience is also saying the same. Yeah.
let me just
Can
try
you
out again.
yeah, can you get a better connection, like an area with better connection? Uh, can you try speaking again?
Yeah, is it better
No,
now?
I cannot hear you properly.
You can't hear me at
Can
all, is it?
I can hear you? Yeah, can you speak again?
Yes,
Hello.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yeah, can
properly
you
and
hear me
clearly.
now?
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I can. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for that. So we're talking about the linguist and educational theorist Jim Cummins, and in his influential work, Language, Power, and Pedagogy, he basically came up with two concepts. One is the basic interpersonal communication skill, and there's something called cognitive academic language proficiency. Let me show you it's written there. Of course, you can see it, the big and the cow. Now, why are we looking at this? What exactly is the problem here? I'm sure there are some subjects which are very specific in terms of their language deliverance. I mean, let's take a subject like sociology. It does use English. However, there are very specific terminologies or jargons, and then there are some sentences or paragraphs that are said in a certain manner, making sure that a particular format of language is being addressed there. Now, what do I mean by that? See, the term family. Now, it's a very normal English term. We all know what is family. But now, when we are talking about it in a sociological aspect or perspective, the explanation of the term family requires a certain different phrases or words or sentences to be aligned in a certain way. And that is exactly how the subject becomes relevant and academically viable. Otherwise, a commonsensical understanding is not what we are looking at when we are making a very subject specific. So, for that matter, there could be many examples like a subject like law. We if we do speak in English, we read the laws in English, but it's not just the kind of English that we interact. So here we are trying to talk about the fact that there are some languages where bits it refers to the everyday social language which kind of children use in normal conversation. These are communication skills students develop naturally through interaction with friends, television, games, social media, playground conversations, and also informal speaking situations. This kind of language is conversational, they are context supported or they're easier to understand. And of course, they are also emotionally natural. For example, if you get to hear a child say, "Can I borrow your pencil?" Now, the child may sound very fluent, very comfortable, and it seems the teacher might assume that the student knows English very well. But BICS is surface fluency. It develops relatively quickly, often within 1 or 2 years of exposure. But the confusion begins. A student may sound confident socially, but may still struggle deeply with academic language. The example that I cited a while ago. Now, that deeper academic language is called the CAL or the cognitive academic language proficiency. What do you need here? You need academic thinking, you need analysis, you need reasoning, you need explanation, interpretation, subject understanding, and a very, very formal classroom learning. Here, language starts becoming more complex because it involves abstract thinking, subject vocabulary, structured writing, complex comprehensions, and not to forget, the cognitive processing. So, here, of course, the concept of language becomes all the more important for us to view and understand how it does. So, here, let's move on to the next slide, wherein it says that when you want to make this both Bix and Cal work fine, something that you need to do is to make sure that if a child is coming up with a certain sentence in a certain way, you correct him if it isn't so correct. But there's a way to correct. There's a way in which the correction is not going to interfere with his personality development. In fact, we are basically focusing on something called confidence. And why it is important? It is important for so very many reasons. We all know that we've learned about Krashen, and we understand that when the affective filter is very high, the learning curve goes down, and vice versa. If the affective filter is low, then the learning curve is high. So we need to create an ambience, the classroom, where learning is taking place, but learning is taking place keeping the affective filter low. Language here plays a very, very important question, right? I'm sure we as educators and teachers, being present in the classroom for years, we have spotted students who understand concepts very well, but they hesitate to speak due to language insecurity. Um, Many adults, okay, they carry classroom wounds from language shame, mocked accents, silenced voices, labeled poor English speaker, you can't clarify things. Why is your sentence filled with bloopers and fillers all the time? Why just shrugging your shoulder and not coming up with the right words? Are you not thinking right? All this we have seen. Okay. So here, when we try and correct, we do not correct in a method or in a manner that hurts. Rather, we should be focusing on correction that builds. One example is right on the screen. Somebody is speaking wrong English or wrong sentence, wrong language, incorrect grammar, and you want to change it. And you say, hey, no, wrong English. That's not how you say. If you do that, then the affective filter goes up. Affective filter goes up, silence takes place. Insecurity develops. Rather, we might just say, wonderful attempt, why don't we do this? And you kind of give the correction. Now, the question that I need to ask, and it will surely reflect into your chat as well, that do students learn better when concepts connect to familiar language? What do you think? Do you agree to that? Do you strongly agree to that? Disagree? Neutral? What? So, do students learn better when concepts connect to familiar language? Let's see what do you mark here. Right. Let's see how you answer to that question.
So I have the results for the polls. Currently, 38% people have said they strongly agree to it, while rest of the people have said they agree to it.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for the update. Yes, we have come up with situations where, if we recall a classroom session and we say, okay, not being able to understand, let me explain it to you in the language you kind of understand. So maybe you take to a certain language, could be Hindi, could be, Bangla, could be something, could be Telugu, and you are explaining the same concept. Now, if it's a very, very specific, again, terminology based subject, okay, like science, rocket science, and we have a lot of words and jargons. To even translate them to your mother tongue is a very, very lofty idea. Sometimes, again, for us also, maybe my mother tongue is a certain language and I am very good at that. However, if you ask me to immediately come up with the, say, for example, multilingualism that we're talking about, what is the exact word for that? I don't know, or it doesn't come to my mind immediately. So, what we are trying to say is that translanguaging, as you have, dear, participants and educators, you have mentioned that you agree. Yes, translanguaging works. It does, but again, it does work to a certain level, to a certain extent. Which is why what we are trying to do is that we are actually going to take care of the multilingual, you know, visual aids. It actually helps us to view the entire matter holistically, not just the same word, okay, translated into the language that I'm comfortable at, because my teacher helped in doing that. If we don't just do that and add on with multilingual visual aids, it's going to be very, very effective. Here, I am going to tell you that validating accents is important, and it really does not pose much problem. You need to celebrate regional accents. We should not forcibly try and have a, artificial neutrality. We might try to achieve and attain that, but it doesn't really help us express. For that matter, expressions also that are associated with language and words also have regional traits to it. Moving the head, it is very Indian. Moving the head for yes, no, no, yes, even that is something that gets associated with language. And you cannot take it completely away. And if you ask me right now that Moon, please talk or say yes, do not move your head, I might feel a little stifled. And I said, oh, you know what? It comes naturally to me. So let it come. Along with that, so in a multilingual classroom, there would be individuals from different regions, say culture. Let's put it in a global classroom. Peer collaboration, if we do that, it is going to help. So, inclusion through language practices is again very important. So, true inclusion, what does it mean? We are talking about participation where there is voice and emotional safety. I repeat, emotional safety, not just physical presence. Okay, it is important. It's not just about the content and the resources, it also needs to be collaborative. Gone are those days, when it is going to be just a power relationship between the teacher and the taught. Even though I'm, as a teacher, if I am using very polite words, but there is this, you come inside the classroom and there's a raised platform, and you walk up to the podium and you look at your students down there and you talk whichever language you're speaking in. Even if you're polite, it does not work. So we need that emotional safety. And dear teachers and educators, it surely does come with language. Okay, so now let's also have another interesting question to that. What affects students' confidence the most in a classroom? I repeat, what affects students' student confidence the most in a classroom? It could be fear of mistakes, it could be fear of being laughed at, teacher's correction style. I don't like the way my teacher corrects me. Accent insecurity, peer judgment. I'm giving you 3 4 options, but there could be more. Feel free to give me an answer. Feel free to write a response to it. Again, I give you out the question: what affects students' confidence the most in the classroom? Okay, so please give me some responses. What is it? Because the fear of mistake that affects the confidence? People are going to ridicule or laugh at. My teacher corrects in a certain way and I don't like that. Accent insecurity, peer judgment, what? Okay, let me see what is your take on it.
So, ma'am, a lot of people thinks it's fear of mistakes. We also have some exciting additions, like someone said being shy is an issue, or fear of insults. I guess insults from peers.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much. And here, it's the concept of getting judged, I'm sure, is what the educators are pointing at. The mistake, what happens if there's a mistake? The mistake gets corrected, people laugh around me, and I'm judged. And that stay with me. It's a wound. So how can language help us? Okay. So there could be, some classroom examples we have tried citing it out. There are some situations which goes, every teacher goes through that. And as students also, we have seen it. So, for example, there's a silent child. In every classroom, you would find a silent child. The newly admitted student, he never participates. Teachers, they kind of assume that there is some sort of, disengagement. But the child is, mentally translating every sentence. Are we, as teachers, over evaluating speed over comprehension? Sometimes we do that. English, speaking English, it's like a prestige issue. Somebody who is very fluent in English, okay, it seems that you are intelligent or you're modern. If you are speaking in good English, then we kind of very rightly conclude on this. Bordeaux's linguistic capital, it shows that certain ways of speaking gets more social value, affecting confidence and opportunity. Of course, last but not the least, we have the parent expectations. The parents equate English fluency with success. Yes, at this point in time as well, discouraging mother tongues. There are so many studies that has been on with cognitive flexibility and attention control. Are we thereby creating linguistic insecurities at home as well? Well, sometimes we do. Now, having said this, there is something called a mindset that we also now, it's time for us to look at. That language shapes students' belief system, fixed labels, risk taking, growth oriented feedback. It encourages participation. So, what matters here, teachers? Micro affirmation matters. Okay, so teachers' language actually is very important in creating the emotional climate. Let's take an example. Instead of saying wrong, what can we say, teachers? We can say, let's improve it together, or say, speak properly. We are used to these commands and we are used to these comments, isn't it? Speak properly or take your time. We are listening. Now, instead of you weaken this language, or we could say that you're developing confidence every day. That's good. That's a good attempt. Let's do it. Yes, if you're thinking to yourself, that how is it so important, in a multilingual language? Because language learning cannot happen in isolation. Yes, the social emotional learning we very well are aware of fell right now in 21st century classrooms. It is important. So there is something that calls a language memory circle that is associated with language delivery, along with that how you feel while you are saying that language. Let's move on to the slide and I'll be able to tell you better. Okay. So we are talking about, like, think of a teacher who made you feel confident while speaking, or a moment when language, embarrassed you. So let's take a quick question here again. What do students remember the longest? Okay. The grammar rules that you teach, the definitions that you teach, the scores that you get, the test scores, or the emotional impact of teachers' words? Which one? So let me ask this question to all of you present here, respected participants. Take your time and give me an answer to this, and then we can take it forward from here. Do you want me to repeat the question, or you can see it?
Yes, we can see the poll. So the poll result
Are we
says
good?
the highest number of people are saying emotional impact of teachers' words. The second highest is grammar rules.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, again, these are not just options that you have selected. These are experiences, and these experiences have been accumulated over years. It's on the basis of observation, right? Along with observation, you have felt it yourselves, which is why you're coming up with these answers. So remember when we started, we talked about multilingualism, we talked about confidence. However, there is one more concept that today's webinar is focusing on, and that is inclusive classrooms. So we need to have language which operates in a classroom. We have identified that let that be multilingual, and we are trying to kind of curate ourselves onto how we are going to use language in that classroom. Hereby, we've talked about how the classroom is going to be safe space. Now we are dropping in one more word here. We're talking about the fact that every classroom should be inclusive. So, how do you think we can do this, educators? Do you have any practical strategies in mind wherein multiple languages, regional influences, insecurities about accents, not enforced neutrality of accents and dialects are entertained? What should we do? Because it is very obvious that if I, as a student, am interacting with another student and we don't have the same level of language skill, there's a possibility that this imbalance would show up. But we don't want that to happen. We want the classroom to be collaborative. We want the classroom to be creative. We want the classroom to have proper communication. We want the classroom to engage in critical thinking. So basically, we want all the four C's in our inclusive classrooms. So hereby, again, I ask you, educators, because I'm sure you have enough experience and wonderful ideas. So please feel free to talk about it. What do you think would be the practical strategies? Please type in your answers and responses and let us know what would be the practical strategies. going to be the practical strategies for inclusive classrooms to have our forces on? Let's see what your responses are. Then I'm going to take you further. Okay. Yeah. Do we have any responses? Teachers, could you think about some practical strategies? Hi, Upasana, if you could just let me know. Upasana, am I audible to you?
Yeah, so we see people are still typing in their responses. A person has said modeling inclusivity inside the classroom. We are waiting for further more responses here.
Okay, fine. We'll take about a minute and then we'll move on. Maybe 30
Yeah, yeah.
seconds or so, and then we can move on.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Someone is asking you to repeat the question. Can you please do that?
Sure. So the question is, teachers, I want you to now think, what are the practical strategies that you, as educators, would like to involve in your classroom to make it an inclusive classroom? Keep in mind the concept of language and multiculturalism and lingualism also. So, how are we going to make sure that the classroom is inclusive? How do we do that? What practical strategies we can use or involve in the classroom is what I'm asking you to think, brainstorm. I'm sure you must be doing some things. You must be into it already. Let's take some more seconds and then we can move on and I can give you some answers as well.
Uh, a lot of people have said that they will incorporate the multiple intelligence theory in their lesson plans. Someone has said that they will be using sandwich language as in regional words for terminologies
Hmm.
and specific terms.
Amazing, amazing answers. Of course, multiple intelligence is Harvard Gardner, and yes, of course, we do use all of that in our lesson plans, and we try to actually get them done in the classroom. And I salute all your teachers for this endeavor. I know what you do, how meticulously you make your lesson plan. So let's have a look at the strategies that we can absolutely use. Thanks so much for your inputs. Right. We can do a think, pair, share. Some of the instructional strategies that we talk about. One being think, pair, share. So we can discuss in familiar language before presenting the instructional language. We can do that. It balances and smoothens, the problems otherwise which could have been there in the classroom if this was not allowed. So we could do that. We could do a visual scaffolding, right? So we could do diagrams, we could do gestures, images. Sometimes when language is not coming easy, we can still express and we can use visual scaffolding for that. It enables, it makes you ready for that. Flexible participation can be done, and you can use very inexpensive things for that. Sticky notes or digital responses, not every participation has to be verbal. What is our goal? Our goal is to see that entire PPP, like presentation practice, okay, and production is maintained in the class, so we can have these information through non-verbal ways as well. Now you might just say, ma'am, then in what case and how do we then use language? Language is okay there, but it can be expressed in many ways. I am teaching you and I want to understand if I am making sense to you. is not necessarily has to be only realized through very, very lengthy, big sentences, you know. So we also need to do something else. We need to also normalize mistakes. We can just have a culture which says celebration of attempts. You're trying, and that is good enough. We could have multilingual corners. We could do storytelling. We could do wait time, right? I think some of you, while I'm talking about this, I'm sure all of this are coming into your ideas right now, because I'm sure you must have done something of this. Not exactly in this terminologies, but maybe a mix of two or three strategies you must have done. It depends on the class strength. It depends on the duration of the class. It also depends when you want to do this: before an exam, after an exam. you know all of that factors are also there. But you are the master. You know when you can use which strategy for your class, because you understand the vibe of your class the best. I'm just providing you some generic strategies that is researched, and we have done and used them, and they work amazingly. Now, when we are doing this, what will happen is that the confidence factor will rise up. So how do we do that? Let's see. Okay. So in front of us, we have building confidence through language. That is something we are trying to see. So how do we do that? Confidence, being confidence doesn't mean that you are perfect. You're not making any mistake. Even if you make mistake and you rectify it and still come up with the correct version, you're confident. Sometimes we say you confidently make mistakes. So what do we mean by that? So basically, confidence can still be with you despite imperfection. In fact, I would like to say that being perfect actually is very non-new stressful, because what is perfection? At what point do you call yourself the perfect one? As a student, as a teacher, is going to take us years to discover. So let's keep that word aside, and let's actually embrace something where participation means a lot. Teachers who create safe environments, they produce students who actually take intellectual risks. And why do I say this? Because you could be perfect with your answer, word by word, punctuation and everything, spelling, intonation, everything is perfect, but you've not learned a thing because you're focused on that. But if I use language to actually churn out what you're intellectually capable of thinking, then I have done my best. Then I have been able to teach you. And then through language, I have built confidence. We could also do language journals, we could do peer appreciation, we could do gradual complexity. We begin with familiar context and then we move on to abstract language. It's not necessary that we have to start with something very abstract. And there is something called teacher vulnerability. When teachers admit language struggles, students feel safe. As a teacher, if I say, oops, I'm sorry, I did not know this, it works. Okay, then let's move on to the next slide. And here I just want to mention something which is already there on your screen, what we have discussed already. It says that children do not only learn through language, they learn from it. So a teacher's words, tone, and expression, it slowly become this emotional atmosphere where languages can flourish. And I'm sure we have such wonderful teachers with us today who would agree to this, because we do this in the class. I'm not going to talk about the negative examples, By this age, already we know what all we have, if I may use the word, endured in terms of sentences thrown at us when we were students. We don't do that anymore because we know that language is very crucial here. Not only for them to learn, but also for them to be in the classroom and understand that it's a safe classroom, and we do this. Now, another technical factor that here we need to see is the appropriateness. So, what do we mean by appropriateness here? We basically mean that, there are age appropriate language matters. Not every age group I will be giving any kind of word that is incorrect and that does not align with the cognitive developmental skills of language as well. So we have young learners, we have adolescents. So basically, there is an every age concept. So language must be curated like architecture. Every phrase builds either trust or fear. So we need to be very careful. You cannot use words which might not be age appropriate. And also, we must here couple it up with something called tone. Please understand, children are highly perceptive. Sarcasm, irritation, comparison, mockery, and impatience. They internalize deeply, even if a teacher feels that it has been said in a class just with a slight bit of joking. Language learning also stops them. So, what do we see here? We talk about Vygotsky, we talk about Carol Dweck, and we say that learning develops socially, right? So, a threatening environment, it reduces the participation. Yeah, it's going back to similar sort of Krashen's hypothesis as well about our affective filters, right? We say, we when we look at Dweck, we say that language shapes learners' identity. Yes, it does. It's an internal belief. It over time it stays with us, right? So this is something, again, that tone is not invisible, is something that we have to kind of remember. So how, like, what effective classroom language does? Okay, what do you think a teacher must have to make sure that it works well? Let's see. Okay, so the question is, what effective classroom language does? We need to simplify. We cannot use language that is overtly complex. Then it becomes intimidating. It does not help. So we need to use language which are not complicated. We need to guide. We need to not dominate. See, because the tone, the body language, as well as the words chosen would either guide a student or make to feel that you're dominated. So you not do that. One needs to encourage and not intimidate. One needs to include and not isolate. There was this teacher in my school who was amazing with her language skills, so much so. Her English was so powerful, so refined, that some of the times we would not even understand what she's saying. It doesn't help. So I have to keep in mind that there's an age appropriateness. Along with that, language, it makes the classroom effective. So we need to use simplified language, not complicate them. Encourage, use language as encouragement quotients, not to intimidate. Guide them, not dominate. Include them and not isolate, right? So this is something we have to do. Um, Now, when language skills are still developing, okay, it's not always, since we are looking at age appropriateness, we do understand that every age group has their levels of language proficiency. A standard 9 or a standard 4 cannot be compared on the basis of their language proficiency, because one is still developing. Okay, when language skills are still developing, what should be the classroom consequences? So let's also put up the slide again. Let me bring it to you. Right. So classroom consequences: unclear instruction delivery, confusion, and reduced conceptual clarity, over dependence on textbooks, classroom management difficulties, and reduced student engagement. If this is happening, what compensates? Emotional intelligence and warmth, strong preparation and subject knowledge, patience, and genuine classroom connections. So, students, they often remember teachers not because their English was perfect, but because they made them feel safe. Now, how? Again, the question that I want to ask is, language growth is professional development. Okay? Improving classroom language is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a mark of reflective, somebody who is a committed educator. So how should we do that? How should we make sure that language growth is also getting aligned well with professional development? Here are some solutions to that. Let's have a look, teachers. So what do we do here? We read widely. Okay, so we build vocabulary and fluency through consistent reading habits, right? We do talk about it very often, isn't it, to our students. And uh, and we don't just say it, because we ourselves have experienced it. It's not just about books, honestly. Nowadays, of course, there are ebooks, and we also make ourselves listen to podcasts of people who speak well. And so we go over to the next one, which is listen actively. You observe skilled speakers to model clarity and tone. A lot of websites nowadays are available, dear teachers, where they tell you how to pace your speech, what should be your body language, eye contact, so many other things. Script and reflect. I personally do that. Even if I know that I have to say this, I'll make sure that I kind of plan the key phrases in advance. These are the touch points. I am going to be talking about it. I am going to be talking about it. So I make sure that I don't miss out on this. I prepared a list that these are the words. They also help me to, navigate through it. Say, for example, right now that I am talking for so many minutes. Yes, I do have a PowerPoint open right in front of us, which you can also see. But then what it is needed to be talked about is there in my mind, and I have done scripting. I have done it myself. I know which theorists I'm going to talk about. I have read their originals as well. I've made sure that I have worked with that, but at the same time, I will not take a risk of just being random. At the end of the day, we all feel highly integrated towards the work we do. So keeping the script and reflecting on it, it's a good idea. Seek training, always. There's no end to it. So communication workshops, peer observations, it accelerates growth. It's not necessary that the training has to be, all that formal, but you can do an in-house training. Okay. With that, I think the focus is now shifting a bit towards the teachers. And exactly here, I need to ask a question to you one more time. Please do respond, dear educators. There's a very important question that I need to ask. And the question is, what do you think? Can a teacher become effective even without perfect language skills? I repeat the question. Can a teacher become effective even without
Yes.
perfect language skills? I'm sorry,
So,
Upasana,
ma'am,
you're
we
saying
have
something?
a lot of responses. We have a lot of responses to your question, and majority, like all of them, have said no, they cannot be a good teacher without perfect language skills.
Okay, great to know. And may I also extend, I mean, this question, and if I may say, why do you think so? It's because I'm sure what the educators are thinking is that if the teacher is not being able to express really well, then how do we teach? Yeah, that supposedly is the answer. Now, yes, acknowledging that is the first step. So, what matters most is awareness and willingness to improve. Yes, you're right. If the teacher is not having the perfect language skill, her explanations will suffer. So, it is important that to make her become very, very effective, we need to also improve on ourselves. And this improvement, dear teachers, is also a part of being inclusive in that classroom. We talked about not anymore power relations between teacher and taught. So the world that stay is where students may forget many lessons, but they rarely forgot how a teacher's words made them feel about themselves. So ideal classroom is not about showing superiority. It is about creating accessibility, reaching children emotionally and intellectually together with language. Every phrase, is an opportunity to build trust, protect dignity, and keep the doors opening to, learn more. Now, I think I'm going to bring you to this particular slide, and that is going to be our last slide. So let's look at it. So it's not a subject, dear teacher. Language is not just a subject. Do we all agree that it is a relationship? It's not just a subject. It's not an academic discipline only. It has so many areas to it. Yes, it was just a very brief discussion that we could do over 1 hour. It needs many such sessions for us to go into so many nuances of it. But I tried to touch upon the multilingualism, also bring in inclusivity, keeping our factoid very, very simple, that language is not just a subject, how Upasana has also started that it's not just a tool. Yes, so we conclude that it's not just a subject, it is a relationship. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. It's not what I'm saying. Now, every time we respond with patience, how you have been doing all this while for 1 year, 1 hour, it validates a home language, or we celebrate an attempt. We're not just teaching grammar, we are building identity, right? We are building dignity, and we are building confidence, isn't it? So, what is one language practice you will change tomorrow? I want to ask this to you, and with that, we may conclude actually. So, what is this one language practice, if I may ask you, teachers, will you change tomorrow? What is one student whose silence you will now understand differently? What are you going to do? Please feel free to give me one response, because that'll help me understand how language can actually become, so very important for us to actually make the classroom effective and a learning space. So the question is up on the screen. You can see, what is one language practice you will change tomorrow? Okay, what is that one student whose silence you will now understand differently? Let's hear it out from you. And I guess this is that will be a wonderful reflection for both the parties engaged here, the educators and me. And I think we can always learn something from each other at this very point as well. So I'm waiting for your response. Please feel free to respond to that. And I'm requesting Upasana to tell me what responses do we get.
Sure, ma'am. We are still waiting for responses. Responses are still coming up. So we have a couple of responses. Someone has suggested they will establish multilingual corners in their classroom. Someone has said multilingual approach to any activity that will be happening within their classroom. And then someone has said making students more engaged or increase classroom engagement is one way. Another person have said they will give encouragement.
Wow. Wow, that's actually quite a bit, and I'm sure it is making sense to all of us present here today. And I guess making the classroom effective through a language that is decipherable, understandable, and keeping the respect to lingualism is what we are focusing on and have focused on. And I think we will take on this practice tomorrow to our classrooms and use it to know that the entire functionability of it rests in good hands. So that will be all from my end. Thank you very much for being so patient and being there.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. I'm pretty sure all our audience have enjoyed it as much as I have, and we got to learn a lot from your session. Thank you to our audience for joining today's session. We hope you found it genuinely helpful. We recently updated our app a bit, so please be patient with us while we walk through the steps to acquire your record of participation. If you have already registered for the session, please follow these steps. Step 1, open the Center app on your device, then navigate to the progress section. In the progress section, please open upcoming and click on this webinar. Click on submit feedback. Please note that this option will be available at 6 p.m. Enter the 4-digit session code when prompted. Today's code is 4494. I repeat, today's code is 4494. You will also be able to see the code on the screen right now. Complete the feedback form and you will be able to download your record of participation instantly. If you have not registered for this webinar and want to register now to download your record of participation, please follow these steps. Open the Center app on your device, navigate to the Learn section. There, you will have to scroll down to see upcoming CENTalks and go to today's webinar. Click on Enroll Now. Once you have registered, click on Submit Feedback. Please enter the 4-digit session code when prompted. Today's code is 4494. Again, today's code is 4494. Complete the feedback form. You will be able to download your record of participation instantly. This process was introduced to streamline your experience and ensure your participation is recognized right away. Before we close, a quick note about CENTalks. This series has been thoughtfully restructured around the themes aligned with center standards that are globally recognized and widely acknowledged, a change that has been in place since the first week of March this year. If you are an educator interested in facilitating CENTalk session, we warmly invite you to visit center.org/about us to explore the competencies and standards. You may also propose topics and key takeaways by emailing us at team@center.org. And our team will help you align them with structured theme and competencies. Our team will be happy to review and connect with you based on the themes planned for each week. We look forward to meaningful collaborations and shared learning experiences. Thank you all for your active participations in today's session. We truly appreciate your engagement. To register for more upcoming webinars, please visit the Center app. Have a wonderful day. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you.